leader in the banking industry by day and a fabulous drag queen performer by night, as featured by Vogue and Tatler Asia.
Takuma Tanaka shares his journey.
Every other hour of my non-work life has been consumed either talking about drag, doing drag, attending drag shows, thinking about drag.
You are now the lead of your company's LGBTQ employee network.
If I was talking to a student who is considering the finance industry, I want to help in that process. I was never interested in finance and I just did my best. I don't want the LGBTQ side of the worry to be of a factor to say, oh, well, maybe it's not for me.
So you grew up in Japan and then you moved to Singapore. You have such an interesting backstory. So please share.
So I was going to a Japanese university first, and then I had a chance to do a study abroad to a university in Singapore for 2 years, actually. And I really enjoyed being in Singapore. Singapore was the first place I was actually able to make queer friends. I didn't really have gay friends in Japan. Mainly because I was very closeted back then. So when I came to Singapore, I naturally, I guess, made friends here that were a little bit more queer than the others. And that really, really, left a huge, I guess, impression on me that I wanted to come back to Singapore. So after I left Singapore, after that 2 years of studying, I did want to get a job in Singapore somehow. Luckily, I got a job here, and I moved here. It's been 12 years since I've been living here as a working adult.
I wanted to ask specifically about where you grew up in Japan.
Sure.
How was that environment like for you? And why was it that Singapore allowed you to feel more comfortable and to make those queer friends?
Interestingly, I did grow up in a very accepting family environment, contrary to, I guess, what other people believe about sort of how conservative Japan can be. My family was, by and large, quite open, I guess, about these things, especially my mom. I was born in Osaka, grew up in Kobe. I was lucky enough to go to an international school. It was much more sort of liberal than traditional Japanese schools. Yet, I felt like I could not come out. I knew I was gay since 3.
Really?
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, from 3, 4 onwards, I kind of knew I was a little different. But somehow I wasn't able to be authentic. I wasn't able to come out. I was bullied growing up, for sure, just because of how feminine I used to be, or I was. And I guess that kind of experience forced me to not come out. That changed a lot when I came to Singapore, when I met a group of very unapologetic queer friends who were out, who were proud. And the ultimate experience for me to be like, oh my God, this is the place to be, was in 2009, I think, or 2010. One of my friends from college was in the Pink Dot video. He was part of like the Pink Dot promotional video as himself, as an out man, together with his brother, talking about his sort of coming out story, obviously interviewing the brother about how he felt. Obviously, it was a very positive spin on a family that was accepting of the LGBTQ lifestyle. And that inspired me so much because I was like, man, I wish I was out. I wish I was proud. And I realized, why haven't I done it yet? I already know that my mom was quite accepting. I can sense it, and I knew she wasn't against it. Like, why am I keeping this for such a long time? That was a big experience for me to like Singapore and want to come back to Singapore, even though, Japan is my hometown.
It's astounding to hear how that impacted you. You've been here for 12 years and you still talk about it like it was a few days ago,
yeah.
Right? And the fact that it was someone that you recognize as well probably added a lot of depth to it rather than, oh, that person's out, but I don't know, maybe their parents are super liberal or they're in a super safe environment. But to see someone so close to you feel comfortable, but also tackle that discomfort of coming out to a family member, it's just really quite cool to hear.
And knowing, even back then as a student, knowing that Singapore isn't exactly a open society. I was like, if he can do it, why can't I? I already know deep in my heart that my mom is probably going to accept it. I don't know what the reaction is going to be. I have no idea, but I know it's going to be okay.
How was that coming out process?
I soon left Singapore because my 2 years of the study abroad ended. Went back to Japan. Then so happens, all these group of friends that I had, the queer friends and straight ones as well, they had this school trip to Japan. So I met them like 3 weeks after I said bye. We went out, like we drank. Well, it was a school trip, so they weren't probably supposed to be drinking, but whatever. We had like a night out, and then it was really fun. So I was feeling euphoric, I was feeling sad, and I went back to my parents' place after the night out, and I was like, this is it. Like, I just met my first group of gay friends for the last time. I'm not gonna meet them again for a while. I don't have any gay friends in Japan. I just felt very motivated to come out. Like, that drove me to feel like, oh my God, I just got the last push from my queer friends. So I went back home and I said, Mom, I have something to tell you. And she's like, what is it? Are you gonna get married? And I was like, no, not quite. And I chickened out, and I was like, I need to sleep. I woke up during like around lunchtime. I was having lunch with my mom, and she was like, what is it? What is it? What is it? Like, what are you gonna tell me? Like, you went to bed. Like, you didn't tell me what it is. And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to say it. I'm gonna have to say it. Like, there's no turning back. Now the buzz has long gone, right? Like, I already slept. I woke up. I'm feeling hungover. I'm not feeling the drive anymore, but I already said it. I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna come out. And then basically I said, I think you know, this is me saying to her. So I said, I think you know, but I'm gay. And I was fully expecting the dramatic, oh, you're still my son, like, I love you, thank you for telling me, like, oh, like, woohoo kind of like moment. And then she basically said, oh, you're telling me this now?
What was the subtext? Was it that
She said,
now?
I already knew. Now? Like, now? Now you're coming out? Like, I already knew.
At
Girl.
3. When you knew, I knew.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there were all these hints, I'm sure. But yeah, she was like, oh, well, okay. Well, thanks for telling me. But I already knew. It's fine.
That's amazing.
And I was like too stunned to speak. My years and years of trying to hide it from her has just like, poof, ended.
You weren't hiding it very well.
Obviously, yeah. But yeah, it ended, and I was like, okay, that was done. Like, that's done. And as my mom is the most important person in my life,
Yep.
my logic was, if she's okay, now I don't have to worry about anything. Like, I have zero concerns with who I'm gonna tell from now onwards, what kind of reaction I'm gonna get, positive, negative. I don't care anymore, because the person that I care the most, which is my mom, knows about it, right? So now I'm gonna just come out. So I put it on Facebook, I put it on Japanese social media that I had. I just put it on every social media place that I had. I wrote like a long message saying, you know, those walls that we used to have on Facebook. I just said, I'm gay. If you don't like it, you can defriend me, but it's okay. Like, I don't care anymore. That was it. Ever since then, I never had to go back to the closet.
That's such a sweet story. And the thing that stood out to me was when your mom asked you, what are you going to tell me? Are you getting married? That she was thinking of a man. That
I was thinking of a man.
she was like,
She was
10
like, are you gonna go to
steps ahead of
Denmark?
you. She was 10 steps ahead of you. So in our prior conversation, you said, I never thought of myself as a finance person. You've been at an investment bank for the past 12 years.
Yes.
And I mean, tell us a little bit about that. Like, how does someone who claims was never a finance person, didn't see themselves in that role, come across such an opportunity?
How it started is pretty interesting. So I went back to Japan, started looking for a job about 3 months before I graduated, which is very late for Japan, by the way. In Japan, second year, third year, you're already job hunting and you're already getting jobs by third year, right? Fourth year, last year in uni, if you're doing job hunting, that's very late in Japan standard. So for me to be a fifth year, because I did 2 years of university here, for me to be a fifth year student and not have a job was pretty bad, right? So 3 months before graduation, I was like, well, my mom was very worried about me. First of all, she was like, I think you really need it. I think you really need a job. I was like, yeah, I know, mom. And then a friend of mine who was working in Singapore at that time messaged me, and she said, why don't you apply to my company? I think you'll be a fit. They're looking for Japanese speakers here. And I'm like, I've not taken a single course of finance. I've never studied finance. I've never done all these internship that everybody else was doing. I'm just not interested in finance. I don't think it's for me. And she's like, no, it's okay. You don't have to worry about it. And I'm like,
that's what they all say.
That's what they all say. That's what they all say. And look at me now, right? But yeah, and then she said, there's a very big LGBTQ network here. And she went on to explain how diversity is big in all these companies, including hers. I did not know that any company, for that matter, would care about such thing. I was like, okay, this looks like a company that I can work for. I'm just going to apply and then see what happens. And luckily I got it. It was the first company that offered me a position. And it was 3 months before I graduated. I was like, you know what? Okay, I better take this. If I don't take this, I may not have a job when I graduate. And that's a horrible thing in Japan. Like you become like the leftover, and I didn't want that. So I was like, sure, I'm just going to go in and see what happens. Not knowing a single thing about finance. I bought a book about finance and I read it, and it was like, what's a bank? Oh, okay. What's a security? Oh, okay. That's literally all I had in my mind. And that's how I started.
Do you want to drop that book title for folks who?
Sure. If I ever find that book again, I will let the viewers know what that book was. Yeah.
Yes, refer to the show notes. If it's not there, then this book is just lost in time. I think that's such an incredible and refreshing take on it. I've been called, and I guess I sort of embodied the type of student that went through uni very focused on getting into financial institutions, specifically the ones that your company runs with, kinds that your company runs with.
You're that kind.
Yeah, so I was absolutely gunning for, you see them all the time. They're running around as interns trying to get coffee on your in your company. So
okay, we don't.
Yeah.
Just to be clear,
yes.
coffee running is no longer. That's a thing of a past.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
They give us bubble tea now.
Yes, absolutely, and adjust logos. I've been there, but the reason why I think it's always so remarkable to hear these kinds of stories, these unconventional quote unquote stories, is because I think that type of finance student is very prevalent in, I wouldn't even say just in Singapore or whatnot. Yep. It's everywhere. I studied abroad in the US, and they're even worse there. Everyone is gunning for those specific penultimate year summer internships that define who you are and how cool you are in that specific social circle. And so I think it's always really nice to talk to people who didn't go through that crazy rat race, and they honestly end up staying a lot longer. They end up, committing and rising through the ranks, which is always remarkable to see. So I think kudos to you.
I think there's two aspects to that, in my personal opinion, right? One, I didn't have an expectation of what it was like to work in finance. I didn't know anybody except for that one friend that I had, and she said it was fun. She never really briefed me on what finance industry or what this company is like. Except the fact that it's very sort of open and very accepting of LGBTQ people. So I went in with zero expectation, zero knowledge, but also zero expectation, good or bad, about what it's like. I just didn't know anything, and I went in and I did my best, and I really worked hard. So that's one thing. I think I'm not saying a lot of the finance sort of mindset people have high expectation, and they get like what's the word? They get disappointed. I'm not saying that.
You
But-
should though, because it's true.
maybe it is. But I just didn't have that. So I just kind of started from the ground up, learning everything on the job and finding out what it is and trying to fit in and just trying to do my best. And I think that was sort of how I was able to survive. And the other thing was, I think, kind of relates to, how, the queer self in me. I was very authentic from day one. I wasn't pretending to know anything. I wasn't pretending to be one of the finance bros. If I didn't know something, I would say I didn't know. If I was training somebody and if they asked me a crazy question, I said I don't know. I just never learned that before. I never put up a front to say that I was always interested in finance, or I'm like, I love this. Am I interested in finance now? Not really. I like my job. I think I like my job because of the content and what I'm able to do and the value that I bring. And I guess that's what makes me authentic, I think, in a way. And I think that's what has helped me stay for this long time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with a lot of your points there. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this specific element of your journey is because to this day, okay, maybe less so now since I've left the industry, but the number of anxious college students who message me and ask me for advice, or like, oh, I didn't take this class. Does that mean I'm not eligible? I'm like, you're a freshman.
First of all.
Yeah, first thing.
First of all, go to class.
Just go to any class,
Any
really. And also, so when I entered Credit Suisse and right out of graduating, and I remember feeling very much of a imposter syndrome, like a collection of different feelings of, I'm going to be running with SMU graduates. I'm going to be running with NUS business graduates in the same program. And I remember the HR lady sat me down and said, actually, we really like the fact that you are coming in with a near blank canvas, because we can teach you everything you need to know. But it's hard for us to tell our employees to unlearn what they learned in business school.
Yes.
And then teach them again, because of everything you just said, right? They come in with that ego, with these expectations. Ego, not saying that they are egotistic, but ego in the sense that I studied finance, so I should be able to answer these questions, right?
Yes.
And when you meet someone who is very refreshing, and honestly, like, you're also young, the HR and, people on the floor as well, my colleagues and my higher ups were like, we can teach you that kind of stuff. We like the fact that you're not coming into this assuming you know everything. And so that's something to take note as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I agree to everything you said about the blank canvas part. Like we actually like those people, right? I think not to say, come with nothing, in your head. Like that's not what we're saying here. I think it's just the freshness of perspective. I think that's one thing, but just the lack of pre-notion about what finance is, what we do in companies, like what do we have to know, what do we have to, like how smart do we have to be, how intelligent do we have to sound. None of that, I think, really matters once you get into a company. And many people don't know that. I mean, rightfully so, right? If you're a student, they have never worked. It's fine. But if I see somebody, applying for a position with a very fresh perspective, they don't have finance background, with an interesting set of experience and perspectives and the ability to think and answer and analyze, that's so much more like valuable than, oh, I took finance 4 years of my life and I am only interested in finance. I'm like, well, don't you have other interests, right? I think you should have other interests, if anything. So I really agree to what you said.
I love that we're touching on this, because I know that some of my listeners are in university or, thinking kind of in the early stages of their career. And
God bless them.
Honestly, yeah, don't get scared by all those finance
I
bros
know.
roaming around your college campus. I was scared kind of, and I was kind of one of them as well. So, like in the end of the day, the more people I get to talk to in the industry, especially those who stay as well, they don't identify with that whole finance
Yep.
notion. Back when I was a student, a lot of the banks came to my campus trying to how to say,
Demystify. No.
debunk
Debunk.
trying to debunk that idea.
Yep.
And they would also try to like bring specifically their employees who didn't have the traditional background, but because of their peers and whatever they're consuming in from the career counselors or in classes, they still feel like, oh, I'm gonna roll myself out of this one. This topic also hits a little close to home because one of my first episodes, actually the first episode I had, was with Terry, who is non-binary, and they worked for like 2 years in investment banking, then left to do like a boutique shop kind of thing, very, very technically savvy. And I was just telling them that when I saw you at a conference dedicated for LGBTQ people, something changed within me where I was able to see an identity that I related to, and also that it matched with finance, as opposed to your typical white and Chinese boys who, kind of live and breathe that. And we were saying how a lot of non-men, so, non-binary or transgender or women, opt out because they just don't see any representation, and also that they believe going into finance is insane toxic culture and like you care about the cufflinks of your suit and all of these things. And I know there has been some work that's trying like of employers in recent years trying to make it sound like we're not the what you think we are. We're actually very committed to diversity. We're very committed to being authentic, and we're committed to providing value, and that value doesn't need to be in that like stuffy suit necessarily. I think this is a good segue into your friend was saying how committed the firm was to diversity and LGBTQ. I wanted to get a sense, first of all, why that was important to you, so much so that it was literally the reason why you applied, and also how you felt after joining the company.
Sure. So I guess in earlier part of our conversation, I said I came out to my mom and I came out to everybody. And there was no way of me going back to the closet, right? Ever since I came out on that day, I was out and proud, living my best life, living my best final year, I think, of uni as an out student, right? And I loved it. Obviously, I loved it. There was no way I could go back to the closet. I had no option to do it. I had no confidence to do it as well. I was not confident enough to say, okay, well, I'm going to move to Singapore where I made my first group of queer friends. And then day one of my company, say I'm straight, or I'm not going to talk about my sexuality. That was just not an option for me. So I had to find a company that is at least accepting of me as who I am. Even better if I was able to flourish and if I was able to contribute in that aspect. The more I guess, spend time being an adult, I realized that does not really exist much in Japan. So I'm kind of glad I stepped out of the domestic world and came to Singapore. Although Singapore, yes, it has its own challenges, but I'm so glad I picked a company that is accepting, not only accepting, but is celebratory of who I am. And the fact that I can contribute in the LGBTQ network that is in my company to make differences, right? Organizing events, going for meetings with other banks, doing all these things and influencing others and talking to other people about my journey, bringing people in to talk about their journey. All this, I have the drive because I am who I am. For me to be able to utilize my experience, utilize my knowledge, and educate others on something that I feel passionate about, what better way is there, right? And I'm so glad I landed on this job because I've been able to do that for the last 12 years.
You are now the lead of your company's LGBTQ employee network.
Yep.
What would you say to the everyday skeptic who sees these employee networks, especially in these big organizations, and goes, why do they even care? Is this even authentic work? I think specifically we can even drill down to a queer skeptic, right? So, I mean, someone who is either thinking about applying or thinking about pivoting their career and into these types of firms with that boldly say about their LGBTQ and diversity and all of that. What would you tell them?
Yes, there is a benefit for the company to attract the best talent, right? It's all been said and done. Like you go to any website, it is written, and or you go to any talks, skeptics may say, all these corporate people, just being diverse for the sake of being diverse. I get it, but what I can confidently say is behind the lens, behind the website, behind every post, behind every event that was successful, there is a group of people like us who is genuinely working hard to make it a success. There are queer people, there are allies, there are supporters who genuinely care about the work that we're doing to bring awareness for our employees or raise funds for the charity that we're partnering with, sharing knowledge for the wider audience, or even help employees feel safe to come out. That effort is really, really genuine, and I know it because I've been doing it 12 years, and I've seen people come and go in my network, in my company as well. But every single person who has been part of the network is coming in with a genuine desire to do all that.
I think you can get very caught up with the enormity of a brand. What I really love about what you're saying is that let's put that all aside for now. I'm reaching out to you, the queer person who's thinking about joining this brand or this company, and have a conversation with us. We are genuinely in this for the betterment of everyone, including ourselves, because we also belong to this community. Yep. And if you like us and if you like the kind of people that we are, then consider it.
If I was talking to somebody, a student who is considering the finance industry or considering to apply for my company, I'm always thinking I was once you. I may not have been as finance savvy as some of the folks who are applying, but I was once in that position, thinking where to go, what am I gonna do? Is this company the right company for me, right? So I want them to make the best decision, and I don't want the LGBTQ side of the worry to be of a factor to say, oh, maybe it's not for me, right? And if I can do that for one student, 2 students, 5 students, that's such a success, right? Whether they choose to come to us or not is a different question, but at least they know.
What do you hope for the network in the near future?
I hope to have more younger individuals join us and shoo us old folks away. Some of us have been in the network, in that whole sort of community of finance, LGBTQ world for quite some time. And we've been working hard, not to say that we don't want to work hard anymore. That's what I'm saying. We've been working hard.
They deserve a break.
Give us a break, right? We've been working hard, and we've been working hard with this goal to, raise awareness, do this, everything I said just now, right? I have this mindset that, we need equality, we need representation, we need to strive for more representation, all that. I don't know what the younger folks are thinking. Do they care about this stuff? I genuinely don't know. And I want the younger folks who are becoming the majority of the company, right, to come in and give us great ideas and let us be of a past, basically, and get these young folks to do things that are innovative, new, and what's truly needed for the younger generations of our finance industry.
I really resonate with that. And I remember when I was at Credit Suisse and I was part of the LGBTQ network, same sentiment. They were so eager for, someone fresh grad to join. And I remember, actually, I can say this, Cindy, our mutual friend, Cindy was telling one of the heads of the LGBTQ network what pronouns are. And I think that's like such a good summary of what you're saying. In that the she was the lead, she was the head, and she obviously was one of the forefront of advancing LGBTQ awareness within the firm. But Cindy had the knowledge of pronouns and had something that the lead really didn't have any experience or any context for. And so there was this like beautiful exchange of information. And I think something else to highlight is how, especially in the context of LGBTQ networks, or if you think about other networks as well, is that especially when I was younger and a fresh grad, I was always really intimidated by people who are much more senior than me, just because you just assume that they know more, right?
Yeah.
And they usually do, but actually that doesn't really apply for LGBTQ specifically. And so I thought it was just so refreshing to see how I was interacting with all these like managing directors and super senior people through the network, but they wanted to ask me like, is this right? Like, is this what people want?
Yeah.
What's your take on this?
What do you guys want, right?
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
So just like beautiful exchange of information, and it can be very empowering for someone who is 21 and just graduated to have that conversation and clearly have more knowledge.
Right, be the upper hand
exactly.
of that conversation. Yeah.
So I want to talk about how you have another alter ego that comes out at night, mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a daytime sport, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which is that you are a drag queen.
Ooh.
So I want to know about how you got into drag.
Sure.
And balance that as well, because drag as a bystander looks exhausting and so much work, especially in the costumes and the execution.
Even more than finance.
Yeah, I mean, you have a day job that's very demanding, and then you also do drag, which is such a intense performance art to me.
Before that, I just want to say, I love how you say drag. You sound so Canadian.
Oh my God. You know, this happens.
I can't do it, but it's
drag.
Drag. I don't know how
I
to
don't
say
sound
it.
like it. The listeners will hear what you said and then what I said.
Yeah. Okay, so how I started drag. I've always loved Halloween. So every year when I was single, I used to do Halloween big time. Like plan costumes with friends, go out in costumes. Nothing extravagant, nothing crazy. I just put together a costume, a theme that works for that year, and then I just used to go out and then have fun. That was it. And as part of that, there was natural element of cross-dressing. I wouldn't even call it drag, because it wasn't fine arts. It was just slapping on some makeup that looks vaguely like a woman and going out in Halloween night. I got together with my partner and we realized we both love Halloween. And we're like, oh my God, we have to do something together, right? Obviously, as a couple. So that was 2017, I think. We started planning our first Halloween costume together. And that was the first time we got into kind of like a proper drag. Like we kind of practiced makeup, we kind of made our own costume, we put something together, and then we did a costume, a couple costume, I would say. That escalated year over year because we're like, oh my God, we did such a good job last year. We need to do something bigger. We need to do something better. So we started doing more and more preparation year on year for Halloween. And there was one year, 2020, that we got featured in Vogue, Vogue.com. I should say. It was an online article, but we got featured for a Halloween costume, and that was like mind blowing, right? We're like, oh my god, like we were like, oh my god, we're so great. And then I guess by then we were doing drag on a yearly basis, but then by 2022 we started doing drag outside Halloween as well. We started doing more and more drag, obviously during Halloween as well, but like outside Halloween. And then we got an opportunity to start performing for gigs in, I guess, 2022. And then sort of that really kicked off our drag sort of side of our life, where we were going for gigs or we were going for events and we were showing up in events in drag. And we were doing pretty good. I think we're doing pretty good in terms of coming up with our own costumes, coming up with our own concept, coming up with our own dance moves, making our own hair, making our own costumes, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff that drag is essential, right? Doing things for our own, making things for our own selves. So that's how we started, and then that's where we are now.
Amazing. I will say that when I interviewed Becca, and I told Becca the Bus, who is Singapore's biggest drag queen, how I was interviewing you, Becca told me, oh, Taku came with his partner and for Halloween, and they just stole the show. They shut down the place.
Oh,
they
my.
absolutely shut it down.
That's the best compliment I ever got from Becca, so that's good.
So I'm curious a little bit about like how's it like working with your partner in drag?
It is a hobby that has extended so far into my life. It is life. It is a second part of my life. And I forgot to answer the whole like balancing thing. And I'll get to that. Every other hour of my non-work life has been consumed either talking about drag, either doing drag, either attending drag shows, either thinking about drag, or either making things for drag. If this is my life, and if my palm is my work, every finger of my plate is drag at this point. I had to take something off my plate in my life, and that is the cleanness of my house. I have decided that my house is no longer going to be clean, tidy, and it's a stress that I feel every day because I come home and I'm like, everything is on the floor, right? Everything is just everywhere. But I'm like, you know what? It's fine. That is a sacrifice I decided to make, and I'm okay with it. It is hard to balance, but thankfully drag is a nighttime activity usually, as you said, right? There isn't a lot of daytime drag, especially daytime weekday drag. That's very much non-existent, except for Pride Month. But thankfully, that aspect of that sort of drag being a nightlife sort of event or activity has helped me to balance between my day job and my night sort of activity, which is drag. So there is that balance there.
And you use the analogy, your palm is work and every finger is drag. Your partner in life is also your drag partner.
Oh, yeah.
So where is he?
He is the mole. No, I'm kidding. No, he's like sitting here. He's the
under
knuckle.
the hand.
He's the
for
knuckle.
the audio
yeah.
listeners.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamics now because I don't think a lot of people associate drag and sort of a romantic relationship together, because I think a lot of people think, oh, drag is being a woman. Now you're both a woman, but you're a man. How do you keep that romantic relationship together and blah, blah, blah. I get that. And it's true. Like, I think drag has taken over our lives as well. Like, it's a strong and persistent and very committed hobby that we have. I think we think of drag as a shared hobby that we both love, we both benefit from, and we both like doing it together because we have a very similar sense of taste. We are in a very similar wavelength when it comes to what we think about drag. And we are able to criticize and appreciate each other's artwork. I mean, I think of it as artwork sometimes. Like, what we produce sometimes is very, very artistic. And it's also a movement as well. The wavelength between us is so similar that it doesn't take away anything from our relationship. It adds more to our relationship because we have a shared hobby. It's almost like we're on the same team. It's a team sports that we both enjoy and we both think we're pretty good at it, and we both appreciate each other's sort of existence in this part of our lives.
Would you recommend going into drag with your partner?
Yes, only if both of you are fully ready for it. Both of you and your partner needs to be on the same level of commitment. If one is more interested in drag than the other, then I don't think it's going to work. Obviously, me and my partner, we didn't go into drag thinking that far. But I think right from the start, we knew what we both like, and we knew that we were able to work very well together. We have skills that we can complement each other. I think I can mix music very well. I think I have great ideas. I think I can make videos pretty well. I think I have a lot of ideas, and I think I have a lot of references. My partner can sew very well, and he also has a lot of ideas that I resonate and like. I have ideas that he can resonate and he likes. So that was a very strong foundation for us to get started on this whole drag journey. Of course, we didn't think it was going to go this far, but it worked well for us.
Why is drag so meaningful to you?
It's meaningful in a couple of ways. I have been able to connect and be a part of a community that I never knew. Finance industry is a bubble. It's a bubble of predominantly Chinese people. It's a bubble of people who are kind of well-to-do. And me being in that bubble for the last 12 years, I did not get the breadth of experience and the breadth of interaction that I have if it weren't for the drag community. Drag community is so diverse. So much more diverse than what I can ever think of or what I can ever experience elsewhere. My partner is Malay. The community is full of Malays, Indians, trans people, and what they bring to the table is so meaningful, and it's like priceless. It's so priceless. I have been able to be friends with so many of them, and they have told me so many stories that I wouldn't have been able to experience if I were just living in the bubble. Not just finance specifically, but just if I was just in the bubble of Singapore, I just wouldn't have been able to experience that. Me being Japanese, I'm definitely an outsider, right? Like, there isn't a community of Japanese drag queens in Singapore. Like, I am pretty much the only one. But the fact that they have accepted me into the community, I feel so humbled, and I can't have experienced this anywhere else. The other thing I would say is the things that we were able to express through drag. It's an art form, and we've always made it a point to have a message. The fact that somebody appreciates the art that I put out is so self-healing and so self-motivating.